Good morning, everybody. For those of you that I don't know, please come up afterwards and say hello so I do get to meet you. I'm the education director for the SDLC, and what's very important in every business is to have a mission and a vision. But for us, there needs to be founded on a set of principles. And in your paperwork there, about 3 or 4 down, you'll find the ideal principles. And I want to go over this, and I'm going to ask you later on, when you're someplace that's quiet, to really read it, because the definitions are not necessarily the cookie cutter ones. But it stands for I, inclusion; D, diversity; E, equality; A is acceptance, and L is leadership. And everybody who joins the SDLC, we ask to sign this pledge. In fact, I would like to suggest that you frame it and put it somewhere, either in your office or your home, to remind you that what we're doing together as we harness this combined power of everybody who's here, that we're working on these principles, because we've got a lot that we can do to move all of this forward. So I want to thank everybody. I want to introduce the panel leader today, and he's from Ireland, and my Gaelic is not good, but hopefully I'm going to do it right. Damien Fanaun, was that close?
Close enough.
Okay, close enough for government work. Okay. Oh, you've got one, okay.
Thank you, Connie. Appreciate the introduction and the opportunity to moderate our very fine panel this morning. So my name is Damien Faulkner. It's a difficult one to pronounce. Connie and I had a little bit of fun with it before we started. So I'm going to start by introducing the members of our panel, and you'll forgive me if I read some of what's already in your material, but we'll start with Josh. Josh is from the Arizona Diamondbacks and is the Senior Vice President of Content and Communication. So he's got a pretty big job, and he's responsible for all internal and external communication efforts for the organization. He is also a bilingual Spanish speaker and worked for the Dodgers prior to joining the D-backs. So you can express your sympathies to him later. He teaches strategic sports communication at ASU's Walter Cronkite School of Journalism and Mass Communication. So welcome, Josh. On my right immediately is Aaron Cohen, who is the president and CEO of the Arizona Coyotes. And if I'm correct, Aaron, you are the youngest CEO in the league. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, that's wonderful. Really big job as the CEO, so he's responsible for all business and legal operations, government relations, company culture, and community engagement strategy. Significantly involved in the Greater Phoenix business and philanthropic communities. So thank you, Aaron, for being with us this morning. And immediately on my left is my old pal, Eric Carlysle, who is, I'm hoping most of you know Eric, or will at least have an opportunity to spend some time with him today. He is the founder and CEO of Media Out Loud, that publishes Compete magazine, the nation's only sports diversity magazine. Eric also founded the Sports Diversity Leadership Council in 2014. So he's done terrific work over many years to encourage diversity in our various sporting communities. It's his purpose and the organization's purpose, to train tomorrow's leaders today and to unite sports organizations with partner organizations such as corporate sponsors and CVBs. And forgive me, but CVBs is the community?
Just Experience Scottsdale, who sponsored the event.
Oh, you have to.
Thank you.
I didn't do my homework very well, did I?
And I'm the youngest person up here. Probably not, but I want to say it anyway.
Okay, thank you. And then finally on my left over here is Patrick Higgins, who is the Vice President of Meeting and Events for Connect Sports, and has seen the continued progress the LGBTQ plus sports are making, and is, boy, I probably should have had more coffee this morning, so forgive me, Patrick, if making excited to continue connecting sporting event organizations and the hospitality community. That's your kind of connection point. To bring athletes to the cities, hotels, and venues. He sees a magic around sports that can bring people together unlike anything else. So thank you, Patrick, for joining us this morning. All right, after those introductions and the marbles in my mouth, now we'll kind of start the conversation. So one of the first questions and the purpose of our agenda item this morning is to kind of check in with each panelist about how sports is changing or has changed. So what's the maybe changing faces of sport? So we'll start with Josh.
Well, I first of all want to thank all of you guys for being here and welcome you guys to Arizona. We got a chance to talk to a lot of people, and clearly this is the time of year you want to come visit us. So thank you for being here, and we hope you'll come back in July or August when it's equally as nice. There you go. Anyway, in terms of the way our sport is changing, I just think obviously we are entertainment, but we are also business, and I think that as we've continued to look at how we attract new fans and the data that we use to stay in touch with our fans, it's just become a very sophisticated business in the way that probably any other business that maybe some of you work for or that you follow are a part of. And part of that, I think, is the diversity that is required for any organization to embrace. But in a marketplace like Arizona, it's everywhere. I mean, we have a very people don't necessarily think of Arizona as this crazy diverse place, but it absolutely is. I mean, we've got every imaginable type of human in this marketplace, and they're all Diamondback fans, they're all Coyotes fans, and really what we've tried to do is find a way to embrace as many different people as we can, and that's, I think, how sports is changing. I think baseball, if you look at the demographics of it over the years, it's really become a sport for everybody, and so, I mean, it's a big question, how are sports changing, but I think the simplest answer is big data, diversity, trying to find a way to attract new fans and really kind of bring the sport to everybody throughout all of Phoenix.
Thanks, Jess.
Thank you all for being here as well. Not exactly hockey weather outside like some of our friends up north, but this is great weather, so thanks for coming down here. Look, I mean, my philosophy, although these sports teams are owned privately, my philosophy is that these are community assets and everybody's a stakeholder in these teams throughout the entire community. So as a result, I think they need to be diverse and represent the population as a whole. So, what does that mean? That means in terms of reaching out to fans and engaging new fans. It means embracing diversity, both externally, looking at new fans, but also internally, and having our staff represent the population as a whole. And we see that as a major competitive advantage to be progressive and forward-thinking there, because when we're recruiting, and the Diamondbacks do an amazing job with this as well, but when we're recruiting people to come work for us, it's kind of on the athlete and coach side, you have that, but these organizations are sophisticated businesses, and we're competing against the Googles and the Facebooks, and not to mention all the other sports teams out there. So, I think teams that really embrace that and take a progressive approach really have a competitive advantage. And that's on the team side. We're also fortunate, both Major League Baseball as well as the NHL, I think, have been very progressive in terms of reaching out to new fans. The NHL launched 2 years ago its Declaration of Principles, and I won't bore you with it's a long list of things, but the general gist of it is that everybody should have an opportunity to participate in hockey, and everybody's a stakeholder, and everybody can play. And along with that, the NHL has launched Hockey is for Everyone initiative. In the past couple of seasons, we've had a Hockey is for Everyone night, and this year it's going to be more expansive, and rather than just having a night or a month, it's going to be spread out throughout the entire year and just a general focus for the league. So I think it's changing, and sports is changing for the better because of it. So thank you for having us here today.
Thank you, Aaron. And now Eric.
Well, I'm just so excited to be here. Things have changed so much. When we started in 2006, it was hard to get anybody to return our phone call. They just simply would not. And we've gotten to the point now where we have the Major League Soccer is a member of the SDLC, the NFL is a member of the SDLC. We've got contacts and phone conversations going with almost all the major leagues and teams out there. They call us, we don't have to call them. It's one of those visions that groups like NAGA saw 40 years ago. You know, nothing happens fast, or you know, it's for sports diversity has become an overnight success, I guess, is a good way to a good way to put it. That took us about 200 years to get here. So, you know, I'm a Indiana farm boy sitting up here with some people that are really important, and I'm just humbled to be here and excited. And you know, my goal with the SDLC is that when these folks call us and they say, "How can you help?" we want to be able to engage our members, which is all you folks out there, and about 90 members with 120,000 athletes, and it's going to be over 150 by the end of the year. So what has changed is the communication's more open. People are more involved. They want to see our money. But at the same time, they want to support our values and what we stand for. So I'm just humbled and honored to be here next to such a fine group of people. And I wish I had more to say, but I'm kind of shaken inside. So I guess I'm going to pass it over to well, the good thing, I have a couple good friends up here today, so it makes it so much easier. So I'm going to pass it over to my good friend Patrick Higgins.
All right, good morning. Glad to be here. Oh, thank you, Eric. Thank you. Glad to be here this morning. I love spending a Saturday morning with somebody that doesn't like the Dodgers either. So thank you for that. I think the biggest thing that we've seen is when I grew up playing basketball, you didn't have more than 3, 4, maybe 5 different options for sports. And at our sports conference in August this year, we had 43 different sports that were represented. Don't ask me what all 43 were because I couldn't tell you, but we went through and looked at all of the different sports organizations that were there. It totaled 43. And there aren't 43 different seasons throughout the course of the year to play sports. So there's a lot of competition for athletes, a lot of competition for time and attention and things like that. So it's interesting to see that landscape continue to change. I think the other thing that we're seeing is the rapid growth from esports and trying to figure out exactly what that means and what we do with that. I was talking with a gentleman from the NCAA a couple of weeks ago who told me that he asked me how old my kids were. I said, well, my youngest is 7. And he said, by the time she gets to high school, you can expect that esports will be a scholarship sport within the NCAA. So the thought of sending my kids downstairs to practice their video games because they have a tournament coming up, I don't necessarily like that idea, but it's coming and we're seeing it. And I think the hospitality industry as a whole is trying to wrap their head around exactly what that means from an esports perspective. But just the changing landscape of sports, the amount of opportunities that kids are going to have become available to them as they get older. These are the sports that they're going to be traveling to play when they get older, and the opportunities they're going to have to build relationships and network and build memories. So it's interesting to see it continue to grow year over year. So we're wrapping our heads around it, but I am very happy to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
Super, thank you, Patrick. And that's probably a good segue to have a conversation that Aaron touched on and that you've touched on around what's next. What do you see as kind of the next frontier for your sport, for your organization, that will build a more inclusive sporting community? Who wants to go first?
I think you passed it, so you have to go first.
No, I was trying to get rid of it. Like I mentioned, I think esports is going to be a big thing because it's one of those things that you don't necessarily have to leave your house to be able to participate. I think there are pros and cons that come with that because when I look back at when I was playing sports and even the sports groups that we work with, and if we travel to see different tournaments and championships, you see those relationships being made on the field or on the court or wherever the case may be, and there's a benefit to that in getting people together to compete. And so it's like I said, everyone's trying to wrap their head around esports, but I'm talking to baseball event organizers and basketball event organizers where the kids will play on the field during the day, and then during the evening, they're going to get back and they're going to huddle up at the hotel and they're going to use a ballroom and they're going to have some sort of an esports tournament, or they're going to be playing video games at night for the sport they've just been playing all day. So everyone's trying to figure out how they can kind of plug that into their events and how that's going to work. But I do think that it's one of those things that we're going to continue to see. I mean, they're on ESPN now, so it's one of those things that we're going to see continue to grow and evolve. And I know everybody's trying to figure out exactly how that can complement what they're doing.
Super, thank you. Who else? Now you've had a few minutes to think about it.
Sure, and please, you do not have to clap every time I speak. I appreciate that, but we can. Yeah, thank you. I think from our standpoint, it's a number of things. I mean, esports clearly is a big part of it, but I also think as a father of an 11-year-old and an 8-year-old, it's trying to figure out how to keep them entertained at a professional sporting event where I used to go and watch 9 innings of baseball, and they, after the second inning, or probably after the first period of hockey or whatever, they want to go around the building, they want to find other things to do, they want to figure out what they're on their phone. So it's how do we engage the next generation of fans so that they're in the sport, but they do it in a different way. And I don't think it can be seen as a negative or a bad way. It's just a different way that they consume it. So I think first and foremost, it's just going to be the fan experience, how that continues to evolve, and how people use the term gamification of the venue or of the building, but how are we going to get people on their phones to be paying attention to what's happening on the field, but also engaged with it on the phone? And that probably goes hand in hand with a big thing coming in the next handful of years as sports gambling becomes more legal throughout the country. There's a lot of legislation right now that state by state is going to start legalizing this everywhere. It's going to change the face of sports as we know it, and people will be sitting in their seats and betting on what's going to happen on the next pitch and the next batter, and how we adjust to that in a responsible way is obviously going to be very important. We can't have a bunch of degenerates that we've seen the way that happens, and that's not our goal, but how do we do that in a positive way and it gets people engaged in the sport, responsible way? I think those are two really big things that are coming.
Yeah, I echo what Josh said. I also think it's really fascinating to see how how teams and leagues are gonna distribute their content and how people are gonna consume that content. There's so many different platforms, social and in some upcoming media rights deals, there might be a carve out for Twitter, let's say, and now Twitter can broadcast NHL games. So it's gonna be really interesting to see. What comes along with that is, and I think baseball and hockey have this too, a lot of our players don't really get out and about in terms of being really showy about themselves. So it's a focal point for our teams and our leagues to really showcase these players a little more. Our star player, Oliver Ekman-Larsson, is about the most humble guy, you can find. And that's great, but in terms of generating some excitement about the team and about him, we're always encouraging him. Our social media person is always saying, listen, you got to tweet more, you send out more tweets. So what's really interesting is, from a diversity and inclusion standpoint, as athletes continue to take stands outside of kind of the scope of their performance or playing, what does that look like? And I think it's a really cool opportunity, and we've already seen that with a lot of athletes in a lot of sports, but I think we're going to continue to see that, and that's a really good thing.
Thank you.
I could go on forever on this one because it's what I do 24/7. I don't have any fun, which I do. It's called work. So that my whole life has been devoted to changing the faces of sports, and I see it every day. I look at it as I look at all my friends in the group today. I was immediately drawn when that question came up to C.J. Kelly, and I hate to embarrass people, but she's a powerful executive who donates her time to a mainly male group at Naga. She could have went to a female league, or she could have done something different, but instead she said, I'm here I want to change the face. I want to do something different. So I'm going to stand up and I'm going to be involved in a primarily male cause. So I think that's amazing. I look and see, I think sports are going to become more recreational, more experiential versus, necessarily just watching. We get another, again, I think dodgeball and kickball are amazing because, they're true athletes, but you can get started, by just showing up on a Saturday morning. So I think that's where it's going to change too. You don't have to go out and spend $3,000 on gear. I had some pretty good rugby shorts. I'm not kidding you, but I didn't have to spend that much. I just wanted to. So I think having fun places to go and being able just on a Saturday to run out to the kickball field and start kicking the ball around is amazing. I also think as groups like the LPGA join up, and we have Sue here today, and showing that women can, we don't want to use the term separate but equal, but we want to use the term equal, and so that there's an opportunity for everybody out there. So that's important. And then the one that I have been focusing most of my attention and changes lately is the idea, because I had to get over this myself, on transgender athletes. That's a tough one because even I told myself, well, how could a 6'3" man compete with a 5 foot tall woman? So I've had to study that and research that and really come to my own conclusion. I think it's very important to give everybody an opportunity to participate as who they really are within reason. So I think that's kind of where I'm going as far as one of my biggest initiatives for now. And then the fact that Gail's here today to have a women's panel, which I think is amazing, and the fact that ESPN's even willing to look at that with her and say, to see where that might go. So if a big network like ESPN is looking at doing something different, then that just shows you that that's definitely that's where the world is heading. So that's pretty much all I need to say for the rest of the day, I think, Damien. Thank you for that question.
You're not getting off that easily. So one of the things I'm intrigued about, and Aaron, it's in your job description, is the culture around specific sports. Some of our panelists have children, and I used to coach rugby, and you'd see kids opting out because every sport has a culture. One of the things that we've been really become mindful of is bullying. How do you see your sport, your organization, how do you see that changing? Or how is it currently changing? We really should give the panelists a few minutes to think about it before we, yeah, Josh.
I mean, I think culture is in our actual circle of success. Our president and CEO, Derek Hall, when he first started, created essentially the model for what we want to focus on. And probably I was just speaking to a young student yesterday about the differences between the Dodgers and the Diamondbacks, and he specifically asked about culture. And I said, this isn't a knock on the Dodgers, but we talk about culture all day long at the Diamondbacks. It is just the corporate culture that we create and that we are part of every day is incredibly important to us. So how does that manifest itself, I guess, in the ways that you're talking about? Certainly when it comes to bullying, we actually just started anti-bullying. We just started a program that we're going to be involved in. That's the Be Kind campaign that goes into schools all throughout the Valley. We actually helped fund this nonprofit that focuses on anti-bullying, but they do it in a not so don't bully way. I mean, they do it in a way that's really focused more on being kind and not focusing on the opposite side of it, what happens when you're not kind. Our manager, Tori Lavello, our actual on-field manager, his son was bullied in multiple years ago in high school and in junior high, and so now he's really gotten himself heavily involved in this. Our mascot's going to be a part of the programs that go into schools, and we're going to deliver these buddy benches that are essentially, if you're getting bullied at a school, you can go into that school and you see a Diamondback logo and you sit there and somebody's going to come and try to help be your buddy. So that's one particular program, but I think, again, it all just comes back to having these conversations and when something like that happens, you can't be afraid to speak about it. You can't be afraid to talk about the things that are happening. This panel today is obviously a step in the right direction towards not letting things like that happen, but then it's incumbent upon us to not just leave it here today, but take it back out into the communities that we live in.
Josh, a question about some of the players. Where do you see all these sports are macho, very kind of competitive. Where do you see some of the changes in that, in the culture among the players?
Well, I think naturally, as our generation, I guess I'm older than I'd like to think, and I apologize, by the way, for the bad beard. We're in the middle of No Shave November, so it makes me look even older, but I think that the younger generation of players who are coming into the minor leagues now, they already are more accepting than the generation before them, and so as they start to get into the leagues that they're in, it just becomes more natural, and yes, there's definitely going to be people who are going to think in a old school sort of way, which I may equate to a bad way, but ultimately I think the players themselves police themselves better than ever before. The things you used to hear, I spend a lot of time in the clubhouse, and the things you used to hear said in the past aren't said anymore, whether it's derogatory terms or slurs or just dumb things that people aren't thinking. As the next generation athletes come in and the last generation moves out, I think it just happens naturally. I don't think it's something, I mean, we have had groups actually come in spring training and talk about the importance of anti-bullying and being accepting. We just had somebody come in this year in spring training, and that helps, but ultimately what helps is just recognizing that the world around you is changing, and it's not really something that's spoken in the clubhouse as much as it's just kind of happening naturally.
That's good. Good to hear it's happening naturally, and it's good to hear that there's like intentional effort to really remove some of the toxicity that we see in sport. Aaron.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, for better or worse, these professional athletes are role models. And, sometimes they do things and everybody kind of cringes. And our kids, we say, hey, we don't want them to see that. But there's also a real positive with them being role models. And when you have good people, that sets the tone for everybody. So, I think for us, just like the Diamondbacks, we try to get out in the community and promote good values and in terms of respect and anti-bullying. And then within the teams, just like Josh said, I think it's an evolving culture. You go back even 10 years ago, and I think it was a different, you might have heard some homophobic slurs throughout sports, and I think that that's really gone away now for the most part, and if that stuff is still going on, people are ostracized. But, it starts with leadership within the organization. We're fortunate to have ownership and leadership that don't tolerate that. We have a zero tolerance policy with anybody that does anything like that. Last year, so we had our Hockey is for Everyone night, and in connection with that night, it was overall inclusivity for a variety of disenfranchised groups, but in particular, we did something called Pride Tape, and a lot of teams did this too. During warm-ups, the players could wrap their sticks, normally it's just white tape, they wrap their sticks with rainbow tape to support that, and it was really cool. I mean, under the CBA, we can't force our players to do anything. We offered it to them, and every single one of our players chose to have the Pride tape, and I thought that was really something. It was interesting because you hope that, you hope it's 2018 that everybody's kind of bought in at this point in time. It was interesting because leading up to that game, we actually had a season ticket holder who sent a note to one of his representatives and used a homophobic slur and said, "When's this, this gay night?" And I won't repeat it here exactly what he said. But I saw that, and that was passed along to me. And look, I mean, we're out, for those of you that aren't here, we're out in Glendale, and it's kind of outside of Scottsdale and Phoenix. And it's a little tough to get to our games. So, every season ticket member counts, right? We can rely on all of them. I chose to kick that season ticket holder out and no longer give him tickets and no longer make him welcome in our games, because that's not something that we stand for. So, I think that things are really changing for the good, and, every single day, you hope that things progress even further.
Wow. Thank you. I think that's pretty amazing. Yeah, it's pretty amazing. Thank you. I'm sure all of us were moved by that. Follow that, Eric.
Well, he had two microphones. He knows to take it away when he needs to take it away from me. So I do want to say, Sam from the NGFFL did say he's offering you guys free season tickets. You can come watch any of their games for free. Sam, is that correct? So he wants to show his diversity too. That's interesting how professional sports is changing, and things do sometimes. It's funny because what has happened is the diversity movement started at the bottom with groups like NAGA and some of the other groups, Renee Richards and et cetera. And what's happened now is because of the great exposure that the professional groups have given, like both the Diamondbacks and the Coyotes, it's going to kind of meet in the middle. So I think what's going to happen is all the hard work that people have done for 50 plus years to make sports diversity important and creating a culture within that. You don't go to an LGBT tournament or without having a big party, and so that's part of the culture. And women's tournaments have a different culture. Everybody has a different culture, but we're coming together in the middle, and it's all going to work out perfectly. I hope that's what we're all working for. So it seems like the 50 years that some of the advocates have put in is now finally coming to fruition because of the 2 or 3 years that you guys have put in, which is really important. So it's just really where I think we're on a trail now to where hopefully someday soon it's all going to just work out, and it will be a transition to where it'll be open to everybody. And I love that that's what you guys are doing in hockey and have done that for many years, more than just 2 years. So I don't want to make people think it's just a new initiative. You've been doing it for quite a while now. So I'll give you my address afterwards. I want some of that tape. Anybody else? So thank you for what you're doing too. So I really appreciate that.
I'll take my Connect hat off and just put on my dad coach hat. So this is probably five years ago. When we lived in Georgia, I was tapped to be our Little League coach for our eldest son. And I remember thinking, what's the best way to do this? Because we're in for 4 months of pretty intense baseball, and we have practice every day. And look back at when I was a kid, and coaches could throw kids around a little bit. I remember I used to step out of the batter's box, and my coach kneeled down with a baseball bat, and every time I did, he'd hit my ankle. So you can't really do that today. But I remember the very first practice, I sat down and looked at the kids, and I said, "This is much more than baseball. This is about who these kids are and who they're going to be and what this experience is going to do for them. So very first thing I did is I sat down with the kids and I said, here's a piece of paper and a pen. You guys figure out who your team captain's going to be. And this team captain's going to be responsible for looking over this team. I'm going to coach, and the coaches will coach, but who's going to look after the team? They had a vote, wrote the kid's name down, came over, he brought out the paper with his name on it, sat down with him, and I said, okay, you see that team over there? You're responsible for them. I don't want any bullying, I don't want any hazing, I want to keep things positive, and kind of went over everything. And at that point, I gave him a piece of paper, and I said, go back over with your team, and I want you to come back with 10 team rules for this season. And they came back, and they came up with how to be a good teammate, only positive comments. They came up with those things. And it was really neat for me to see over the course of the season how they took ownership over that. It wasn't a coach telling them not to bully, but they took possession over the decisions they made, the team rules they made. And it was the best season. I get with the parents every now and then when I go back to visit our office in Georgia, and everybody talks about how great that season was. I think it happened because we set the framework for what our expectations were for the team. And so the bullying at that point, we turned ownership over to the kids. This is wrong. We need you to police this. We need to take care of this. But when you combine that and with the positive feelings they get that come from a good season, to when they turn on the TV and they're watching their athletes, their favorite athletes, the ones that they have jerseys on, doing the things that you guys are talking about, that's the perfect way to reinforce the decisions they're making on the field. And for me, when it comes to the question about bullying, it just comes down with letting the kids know right out of the gates, this is wrong, and we need you to take a role in helping to stop this too, because if parents are the only ones that are always stopping these things and coaches are the only ones, we can only stop what we see. But if the kids can take ownership over that and they realize it's wrong, then that was where, for us, we saw we didn't have to keep an eye on it because we knew that they'd policed it themselves. So, yeah.
A lot of wonderful input, a lot of wonderful progress for finding ways to include everybody in sport, which for me, I was a teacher in Ireland, and I've always viewed sport as being character forming. It teaches you so much. And, you know, I was a rugby coach, and in starting the Phoenix Storm here in Phoenix, which was a gay rugby team, one of the things is a very principled game. You go beat the shit out of each other on the pitch, and then you come back and you drink and you kind of celebrate, you know, the fact that there's a lot of friendship. But there's a very interesting story here locally, because that team, one of the most important pieces of the evolution was the joining with one of the established local teams, the Camelback Rugby Club, and the formation of a partnership and a friendship that really kind of built bridges in the community, in both of our communities. And without allies like you guys, we don't make progress. We can be very isolated. So I just want to thank you for coming here today, spending time with this forum, and we really appreciate you guys. You help us a lot, so thank you. We'll keep building those bridges. We've somebody got the most important picture. Yeah, sorry, some questions.
Yeah, just a question to Josh and Aaron. Years ago, the demographic at your sporting events were basically male and maybe child. So you've opened it up to making an event, not a game now, right? So has your crowd demographic changed? Do you have a lot more women? And how's that changed through the years?
Yeah, I mean, we are definitely a family sport, so we have obviously still fathers and sons coming, but there is an enormous change in the demographic, and not just as it relates to male-female, but we have close to a 30% Hispanic population out here, and we do put on endless event nights, whether it's a Pride Night, and I should point out Noel Guevara here, who was kind of the whole impetus for our organization taking the next step into really reaching out into the LGBT community. Those sorts of things have a tremendous impact on, I think, not just that night. Yes, you have a night and you say, okay, we do a Pride Night, and you can check a box or you can say that you did it, but hopefully if we're doing it right, and I think we've slowly gotten better at it, I don't think we were great at the beginning, I think we've gotten better, I think it makes the LGBT community in Arizona go, you know what, I might come to another game. I enjoyed Pride Night, and I'm going to come see another game where it's just a regular baseball game, and yet they might still wear the rainbow A hat that we gave out, or they might start to, I think, just humanize another demographic that's coming out to the ballpark. And that, going back to your question about how this is changing, I do think that the more people are who they are openly, I was thinking, as you were talking about the clubhouse, like part of what's made the clubhouses change, and I'm going to come back to your question and finish it, but part of what's made the clubhouses change is that everybody in the clubhouse probably knows somebody now who's come out and who has, and it makes it so that it's not as easy just to throw a slur around or to bully your teammate who says it. So I think it is a very real effort. It's a concerted effort for us to not just, I mean, I think we were talking about Star Wars nights. I mean, we will try almost any sort of event night that you can try to bring in people that you know you can reach. So whether it's an LGBT night or a Star Wars night or a Hispanic Heritage Day or a Mormon night, I think that's helped us change our demographics because yes, they come on that game, but once they've been introduced to it, hopefully they enjoy the entire experience and keep coming back.
Yeah, I mean, we're just like Josh, we're reaching out to a whole variety of, we don't want just the 60-year-old heterosexual white guy or that's a, dying fan base that we're not going to have for very long. I think we have to do this in an authentic manner. I think different communities get a sense of if you're just trying to pander to them to sell a couple tickets. So, I think for us, just like Josh, I mean, they've done a phenomenal job with this with the Diamondbacks, is really reaching out and engaging these communities. The Hispanic community, right now before, we looked at, do we want to have Hispanic radio for broadcasts? We can't just do that just like that. I mean, we have to really build a connection with that community. So that's something that we're really focused on, and that's something that we do a lot of. I mean, we donated $2.7 million back to the community last year, and a lot of that money was to disenfranchised groups or to support youth hockey. We supported a sled hockey program just recently for disabled people to play hockey. So that's something that we're really focusing on, and we're starting to see that too. It's a very diverse fan base now.
Anyone else? Any more questions?
Access to sports, and especially at the top level. I'm just
I don't, but I also have no doubt that they exist. I mean, we're very fortunate that Major League Baseball a few years ago hired Billy Beane to be the vice president of inclusion and diversity, and he was after he retired, he's when he came out, but he actually, interestingly enough, was very, very close friends with our manager, Torey Lavello, same guy who's got the anti-bullying interests. They were like best friends growing up. And they kind of split off, and I think Billy walking into every big league clubhouse, every spring training, and talking to the teams about why it's important to treat everybody the same way and be diverse and understand all the things we're talking about today. I think it can't be long before the first person comes out, and it will be accepted. I truly believe it will be accepted. We've seen it in other sports. Do I personally know of anybody just waiting to come out of the closet? No, I would love nothing more than being the team that does it. I would love nothing more than being the person that the player walks into and goes, hey, dude, I've got something big we're going to have to talk about. Because God knows it will wind up making my life crazy helping this person come out. I would love that. I think that'd be an amazing thing, but I don't have anybody that I know is ready to do that.
Call us first.
You got the exclusive. Your handshake here, right here. There we go. Yeah. No, similarly, I don't know anybody, but I know the culture that exists in our locker room, and I know now that it's a culture that would be incredibly accepting of that. So we'll have a competition. Whose player is going to come out first, and And we know where we're going, though. So.
So on that line, if I might ask, what about officials? Are you seeing more officials come out or being welcomed?
We do have a Major League umpire who came out maybe 3 or 4 years ago, and it is a complete non-issue. I mean, it literally couldn't be less of an issue. The players, they're going to be just as pissed as him as they are at somebody else for not. I mean, it really has zero bearing on anything. And I just think, again, as more and more people within everybody's life comes out, that's why, I mean, it takes such courage, again, to highlight Noelle. And when she first came to the Diamondbacks, she wasn't out. She's now proudly out and talks about it. And I think the 80 people that work around her in center field recognize it's just Noelle. It really isn't that big of a deal. And I think that as more, whether it's officials or players, it really is, I think, a complete non-issue to the overwhelming part of society. And frankly, to those who it is an issue, I think they've kind of learned you're going to be ostracized if you make it be an issue. So even if it drives you nuts or you can't handle it, you still can't act on your anger. You can't act on your frustration. Just shut up and do your thing. And so I don't think, I believe there's only one out Major League umpire, but other than the day that he came out, I can't ever remember it being a story at any point at all.
Same in NHL.
Yeah, same. I can't think of any officials that have come out, but if anybody did, I don't think it would be even a story, because I think people would accept that. So, okay. Yeah.
Any final questions? Yes.
Definitely you're representing the Major League Baseball and NHL hockey, but is there a push or a cause to join all Major League sports, women's basketball, Suns basketball, et cetera, across the board, just like the Sports Diversity Leadership Council joins kind of our non-professional sports? Is there a push for that, or is there even a talk amongst organizations to have a group diversity and inclusion across all sports?
That's a great idea. Thank you. I think that's something. I mean, at the league level, that's not really something that we control. But I think it's a great idea. But certainly something in Phoenix, and we're fortunate to have a great relationship with the Diamondbacks, and they do a Coyotes night during the season. We do a Diamondbacks night. So I certainly think that there's some room for growth there.
And I would just add that I think with the presence of people like Billy Beane at the league office, and I don't know whether the NHL has somebody who's like that, but I know Billy Beane is having those conversations with every sports organization in the country. I don't know that they've formalized it, or Noelle, I don't know if you're familiar with anything that they've formalized, but it's probably not far off, because it's natural. Even if it's not formal, those conversations are happening and those bridges are being built, and probably it just is going to take somebody saying, hey, let's formalize this and call it a weird thing with an acronym or whatever, and it'll become a thing.
So keen not to run over time. Do you have a very quick question, and then we'll kind of...
Just wanted to say there's Eric's next project.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you so much to our panel again for doing an awesome job, for being our allies and being here today. Thank you so much. And now I'll hand it back to Connie.
Right here.
Jared, thank you for getting my picture. That was really important.
Yeah. Thank you all, gentlemen, for tuning and being here part of this panel. So everybody, we're going to take just a quick break, and we'll have our next panel. So be sure to ask these gentlemen some questions, ask each other some questions, and we'll be right back with you.